Guys, I have been trying to build up my courage to do this video because I'm not good at this stuff. But I promised you. So this is the video on why I think Eris is Gwyn and Catherine's father and not Lucian or Tamlin. First of all, the thing with Calanmai is that the Spring Court exclusively calls it Calanmai, but it is basically the Great Rite, which every single court has to do, which we know from Tamlin and Rhys. It's basically sex to infuse the lands with magic so that the lands don't die. However, when Gwyn is talking about her mother and how her mother was chosen as the maiden for the Great Rite, she says that she was one of the maidens chosen from the Sangreva Temple. The thing that I have with that is that we know the Spring Court Calanmai takes place in this huge cave. Tamlin has to go to a cave, and then there's maidens lined up there from the Spring Court, and he has to, or the magic chooses one, basically. But the other thing is that Gwyn talks about how her mother was, obviously she was half nymph and half high fae, because her mother's father, her grandfather, was an autumn court high fae seduced by a nymph. So what I wanted to say about that is that the Sangreva Temple is located between the spring and autumn borders, but Tamlin says exclusively when Ianthe comes that his temple hasn't been used, like, in forever. That's why he gave it to Ianthe. So that's why I believe Sangreva technically belongs to autumn. Also, it was mentioned that her mother was rejected from the nymphs of spring because she was too high fae for them, I guess. She wasn't fully nymph. But she was also rejected from the forest house in the autumn court for being too wild, too much of a nymph. So they stuck her in Sangreva Temple. So if she was rejected from the forest house after she was rejected by the nymphs, that means Beren sent her to Sangreva, which means Sangreva belongs to the autumn court, not the spring court, as we know, because Tamlin said that his temple hadn't been used in forever. And in Akasif, Gwyn had only been in the library for, I think she said 2 years or 3 years, so it hadn't been that long since the attack on the temple from Hybern. But that's the Calanmai thing. Basically, Tamlin performs it in the cave. I don't think the priestesses in Sangreva would have left their temple unguarded, because they didn't really have guards there. That's why they got attacked and killed and raped and everything. They wouldn't just leave and go over the spring border for their Calanmai, especially if the temple technically belongs to the autumn court. They would follow the autumn court rules. And as we know, Beren really, really doesn't like lesser fae, or women, for that matter. He doesn't like lesser fae or females. So a lesser fae female asking to live in the forest house, he would say no. And where does he send all of these misfits that he doesn't like? Sangreva Temple. Because it belongs to the autumn court, not the spring court. Also, if you look at the map of Prythian, I should have printed that out to show you guys, but if you look at the map of Prythian, the spring court and the autumn court share the same outermost border, which shares a body of water. So the nymphs could have, they can probably swim across the border if there's no magic holding them back, because they're on the water. They're not in land. But they share a water border, which is why the nymph thing makes sense. A nymph being seduced by high fae from autumn. Could have traveled past the border or whatever. Personally, I think that Gwyn's grandfather is one of Beren's sentries or emissaries or something of that nature, because why would any other high fae be traveling near the border? Like, Beren wouldn't go near the border. He's the head honcho. He doesn't have to do the legwork, So I don't think it's Beren, and he wouldn't have ever touched a lesser fae with a 10-foot pole. Let's be honest. He's not the grandfather. He can't be the grandfather. He killed Jasminda for loving Lucian because he believes Lucian is his son. Just for loving his son, he murdered her. So he wouldn't have had relations with a lesser fae. So I think it's one of his sentries or emissaries. Now, let's see. I talked about Sangrava being between there. Yeah, so Gwyn's age. Gwyn is 28 years old. The curse that Amarantha put on the lands was for 50 years. So Gwyn lived basically her entire existence under Amarantha's curse. And I know a lot of you are like, oh, well, all the High Lords and their heirs were under the mountain. The only people that weren't under the mountain were Tamlin and Lucian in the Spring Court. But you have to think of the context here. Lucian actually, was it Lucian or Rhys? I think it was Lucian. I might have to check that, though. One of them said specifically that Amarantha would let people out from under the mountain to attend to business sometimes. So taking that into account and the fact that she wouldn't want to rule over a huge mass of dead land, she would have had to have let someone from each court perform their great rite, right? And she wouldn't have taken the risk of letting the High Lords out from under the mountain. She would have had them send one of their sentries or their heir, because most likely their heirs, if they knew who their heirs was, because, you know, magic can choose an heir when they're born. That's something I'm going to go back to. But we know Eris is Baron's heir, and in order for the lands to be the most lush or magical or powerful, she would have had him go and perform the rite. Even if he didn't every single year, he could have gone one particular year. A maiden was chosen for him, and I believe that was Gwyn's mom 28 years ago. Let's see. 28 years ago. Oh, also, this is just a little aside. It doesn't really impact my thoughts that much, but Elaine is 24. 24 years old. Gwyn is 28. I don't think SJM would have Lucian's daughter be older than his mate. Let's be honest. I know the whole age gap thing, blah, 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 but this is different than just the age gap thing, because with the age gap thing, we know that they age very, very, very slowly, and basically, like, the bad boys are, like, mentally in their 20s. You know, Lucian and Tamlin are, like, mentally in their late 20s. All of them are kind of like that. Gwyn is 28, Eris probably looks like he's, like, 33, but that's still older than her, you know? He's still a lot older than her. And Lucian would be a lot older than her. But she wouldn't make Gwyn's father's mate younger than herself. It just doesn't make any sense at all for that. As for the Tamlin thing, we have to remember that he was in love with Feyre. Feyre was 19 at the time. So again, I don't think he would have dated someone that was younger than his daughter. I just personally, like, I don't see SJM ever writing that. I just don't. I know a lot of you probably have a different opinion, but I don't think she would ever write that. It would have to be someone older than Lucian and older than Tamlin to be her father. Also, look at Feyre and Nyx. If Gwyn is 28 and Eris looks 33, that would be okay. He's still older than her. Feyre is 21 and Nyx is just being born. She also will have a closer age gap than her and her husband. But Eris is going to have a bigger gap between him and his daughter, even if they look around the same age. If you know what I'm saying. I might just be babbling. I don't know. Also, Lady Autumn. This is an interesting thing. I looked her up specifically for this video, and for my fanfic. But I wanted to refresh myself. So I looked her up, and interestingly enough, she was only 40 years old when Eris was born. She was forced into the marriage with Baron by her parents at the age of 20, so about the same age Feyre was when she married Rhys. And I thought that was really interesting, because when Feyre describes her under the mountain, she describes her as being, like, very young looking, very beautiful, So I think Lady Autumn probably doesn't look that much older than her sons either. So SJM would write that, but he wouldn't write a mate of the father being younger than the daughter. If you know. And now we're gonna do kind of a deep dive. I might just be going off of whatever, but I was talking to my group of people, you know who you are, love you guys, and someone mentioned about, obviously, how Lady Autumn is like one of the most fertile women in all of Prythian, or females in all of Prythian. And you have to remember that, obviously this isn't real life, but in context, you have to remember that if someone has twins, they're usually pretty rare unless you have twins in your bloodline, like through your mother or your father. Or you're just very fertile. And as we know, Lucian isn't Baron's biological son, he's Helian's. He is Lady Autumn's biological son, but Eris has both Lady Autumn's genes and Baron's genes. These two people that had 7 children within probably the span of like 100 years, 150 years, which is nothing to them. 7 children. And we're told that, you know, it's very, very hard for Fae to get pregnant because they only have like 1 period a year and all this stuff. So if Eris has Lady Autumn's genes, it would make sense that he would bear twins with 1 encounter with this priestess from Sangreva. It just makes sense to me. Also, going back to Baron and how he hates lesser fays and he hates females because he doesn't think they're powerful and all that stuff, which we saw at the High Lords meeting when he was totally undermining Nuan and her Bebe antidote. And Eris is like, oh, I'll take it. I love him so much. But anyways, we know that he hates lessers and females. Meaning that if, stay with me here, I was talking to my friends in the group about this and someone brought this up. If Lady Autumn had a girl at one point, or a couple girls at one point, Baron could have slaughtered them just for being female. He could have just killed them as babies. And as we know from Rhys, if he had solid proof that Lucian wasn't his, he would have killed him as a babe, Rhys says. As if he knows something. I find it weird that he would say that without any, like, proof or without knowing something about Baron. So I have a feeling that Baron probably had a daughter and killed her. And my theory here, because I get really wild with my theories, my theory here is that Eris was actually a twin to a sister. And since we know Eris is definitely Baron's heir, that means the magic chose him from birth. So my thought is that Eris was actually a twin to a sister who was born maybe a couple minutes before him, and the magic chose her to be the heir, and maybe that's why Baron killed her. Because, I mean, even if she wasn't the heir, even if she was born after Eris, and he didn't want daughters, or he didn't want to be seen, like, weak for having daughters, he could have killed her. Because it's more, it's more often that you have twins when you're a twin yourself, or it runs in your bloodline, as I said. I think that would be a really cool twist. Not cool, kind of depressing. But if Eris was a twin and Baron had killed his sister, and then Eris had twins and Katrin died, I think that would be like a cool, like, connection, like a plot twist to throw in. And I think he would be able to mourn a little better. Not that he wouldn't mourn his child anyway. He would, but he didn't know her. Also, another thing with why I think Eris is the father is because in the whole swing of things in ACOTAR, SJM very rarely focuses on love interests for the second tier of side characters, if you know what I mean. Like, Tamlin is a side character, but he's like a top tier side character because he was once a main character. Nesta was a side character, and now she's a main character. I don't think Eris is going to ever be a top tier side character or a main character, unless it's from Moore's novella, like as a POV, like a small POV, but I don't think he's going to get this whole book about him. I do think he's going to get a redemption arc, but I think it's going to be in him finding out that Gwen is his daughter. I think that's going to be his redemption arc, because he won't get a love interest. And if he doesn't get a love interest, what better way to redeem him than for him to try to earn the love of his daughter, instead of just some other female. I think it would be really sweet. It would prove to us that, you know, he wears a mask, like people say Rhys wore the mask to be evil or whatever. We know Eris isn't actually evil. Cassian basically says as much at the end of Akasith, how he can see him and that he's not one of the bad guys, and, you know, he's too cowardly, blah, 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 blah. Keep in mind, Eris has been doing anything he can just to friggin' survive Baron. Because, again, Baron would just kill him if he goes against him. He has 7 sons. The next son can be the heir, or another son can be an heir, and he doesn't want that. He's already been, you know, training Eris. He's already been having him do all his dirty deeds and all this shit. And, like, we know he's not evil. So I think to prove himself, after Baron dies, because if he doesn't die in these books, I'm gonna riot. He better die. To prove himself after Baron dies, he's gonna, like, take off the mask. I think he's going to absolutely, like, adore the love of his daughter. That would be a really nice thing with Gwen. Also, to throw drama in there, because we always need drama, and SJM needs drama to basically survive, if Gwen is actually Asriel's mate, and the truth comes out about what happened with Eris and Moore, and then Asriel's like, shit, like, I hated your dad, like, I almost strangled him to death, like, we hate each other. I think it would be funny for Az and Eris to have to get along for Gwen's sake, and that would just be a nice little tension there to build on any kind of drama, yeah. But I think that would be really nice, and, you know, I don't know, all of those reasons, it just points to Eris being her father and not Tamlin and not Lucian. Like, that's too obvious. It's boring. It's like the 3 brothers, 3 sisters thing. Like, I don't know. If I'm writing a book and I try to make my plot twists, like, not recognizable. I can't think of words when I do videos. But yeah, I try to make my plot twists, like, not easy to figure out. So I don't get why SJM would just be like, oh, it's Tamlin, oh, it's Lucian. Like, that's too easy. Come on, it's too easy. Sangreava belongs to autumn, not spring. You know, Lucian has a mate that's younger than Gwen. It wouldn't be Lucian. You know, Baron wouldn't touch a lesser fae with a 10-foot pole. The grandfather can't be Baron. You know. What else did I write? Oh yeah, Katrin. So we know that Gwen has the Autumn Court red hair and the teal eyes of her mother. I think they said her mother had teal eyes, or her mother looked like her, something like that. I think that wasn't just, I'm pretty sure they said that, but anyways. We know that she has the teal eyes, but she has the Autumn Court red hair. Now, Katrin is said to have very pale skin, like the Autumn Court, but that she had hair like onyx, which is black, and dark eyes with, like, starlight in them or whatever, to be dramatic. And who do we know that has dark hair and dark eyes? Nymphs. nymphs have dark hair and dark eyes. And Gwyn'S also pointed out that Katrin had the webbed fingers. She didn't, but Katrin had the webbed fingers like a nymph. So I fully believe that Katrin took after their grandmother, and Gwen took after their mom and her dad. Eris with the freckles, because I'm convinced he has freckles. That's just a me thing. That's just a headcanon thing. I always saw him with freckles. And I think she has Eris's hair and freckles and her mom's teal eyes. And yeah, that's, thanks for listening to my 20-minute rambling, because I couldn't get all my thoughts together in one process. But, I hope I kind of made sense. And yeah, I know I'm going to stop this video and I'm going to think of something that I wanted to say. Let me check my paper one more time. Yeah, as I said, I think Lucian and Rhys and Eris and maybe even Lady Autumn knew that, or maybe not Lucian, but the rest of them. I think they probably knew that Baron had killed one of his children before, because I can't really, like, I don't like Rhys, obviously, but I don't see him just, we know Baron is evil, but I can't see Rhys just throwing out an accusation like, oh, Baron would definitely kill his kid as a newborn. Like, how are you gonna say that without knowing for sure? And I'm interested in seeing what he knows about that. Like, I read that, and I was like, dude, you need to back that up with something. Like, tell us why you think that. Like, do you know that he killed one of his children, and you're not saying anything? Like, is that what the weird thing with Eris was, when you guys made a deal, and he wanted you to support him when he becomes High Lord? Like, I don't know. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting if Eris had been a twin and his sister had been chosen by magic, and Baron obviously would not stand for that and killed his sister. And then Eris, when he conceived Gwen, he had twins, because he has Baron's genes and Lady Autumn's genes, the most fertile two people in all of Prythian. And also, we have never seen another set of twins aside from Nuala and Ceridwen, but they're lesser phase. We've never seen twin high phase. We just haven't. So it would make more sense that they were conceived by an heir that is very fertile. And who else would be very fertile than the son of two fertile people? Just makes sense to me. I'm gonna stop rambling now, but I hope you kind of enjoyed this video and sort of know what I'm talking about. And yeah, comment below if you agree with me. Bye.